Working on my AC hoses because it's going to have AC in this convertible. Had it with the small block, but now I got to convert it over to the new compressor, a newer condenser, and need to have the lines made up. So this is all going to be factory here. This is going to go up front, and then it's going to go to my condenser because it terminates right there. And then the line's going to come up from the compressor. So I'll need a hose, barrier hose with fittings from there to the compressor. And then another line going up back to this. This is the return line. So normally the big AC compressor, the V-twin style, sat on top of the small block. So I cut this off. There's a hose place I take this to, and they will TIG weld the new fitting on here that's ready to crimp onto my barrier hose. I get the barrier hose from eBay, and this line is the one that goes right there on your factory e-body. So I got it plugged up right there, but it's gonna go right there. Expansion valve goes into that fitting. The capillary tubes for the expansion valve control, one's there, and then this is my aftermarket one I put in that shuts off my compressor if that line gets too cold, which also goes inside this. So cutting this off, gonna take this to my hose guy. He's gonna weld a new crimp-on fitting for my barrier hose. This is the barrier hose I'm ordering off of eBay. I looked at the Coolant because this is the size I used. It says 1/2 inch on it, but it sure is fat on the outside. Let me see. Read all the numbers. Okay, this is all off of eBay that I used for my Coolant. But what I looked at on the Coolant, this line, after I had the new fitting put on, you have to make sure you clock it the correct orientation before you have it crimped. But on the Coolant, I've got it running, at the end's about over here, and it runs all the way down. It goes through the bottom over there. It's hidden behind the grill, and I've got it snaked all the way over to the other side where it goes onto the fitting that goes onto the compressor down there. So it is pretty long. I could get some aluminum lines and convert it over somewhere, make it look neat so it can go like parallel with this one. But the one on the Coolant has been working fine for 5 or 6 years now. I don't want to mess with it. I'm just going to order 10 feet of this barrier hose. That way, once I have it crimped on, I can decide how long I want to make it and cut it off so it looks hidden. But I think I had 10 feet, and this is what I have left. The unused portion of the last section of hose I bought for the Coolant, and this is about 3 feet. So it looks like you used about 7 feet to go down in there. And then remember, I ordered some thinner barrier hose also. I don't have that. Let's see what it's on the Coolant. Because I also have to order that because this line goes to the condenser, and then the other end of the condenser would go into the outlet of the compressor down there. So let's see how we did it on the Coolant. I don't have any lights turned on. Let's see if you can see this. Nope, it's hard to see. But let me see if I can just verify it. Okay, on this one, going into the receiver dryer, I had the shorty because some of the 70s are different from the later model e-bodies. This one connected here. I had a fitting crimped onto my hose. All these fittings and hose you can get on eBay. So this hose runs down here, and then it runs down to my condenser, and the other end of the condenser goes to the AC compressor. Sorry you can't see that, but I don't have the time to turn on the lights right now. So order your fittings, order your 2 sizes of barrier hose. This one I think is 3/4, but it kind of matches the original hose. It's just fat. Plus all your crimp-on fittings, they're not going to look like the factory once you're done, because you are going to have like a 6 or 8-sided crimp-on fitting because of all the new tooling that they have out there to crimp those on. So it won't look like this, but it'll work. All right, filling up the radiator with coolant, getting close. Just so everybody knows, with these Hemis, this was your air bleed to get the air pocket out. So since I have an adapter, a reducer here to 1/8 inch pipe thread, as this is filled up here, you open up your air bleed, and normally I'd have the little 1/8 inch plug with a little tiny, it's a little plug on the end, but since I'm using this for my rally gauge, I'm opening this up, and I can feel air coming out of it. So you just keep, because the air is filling up the block, so you can even hear it. I don't know if you can hear that. See, it's really quiet. I think you can hear the bubbling. So you just keep filling up your radiators till it starts coming out here, and then you plug it back up. So I've got fresh Teflon tape on the 1/8 inch NPT. I don't use any of the liquid pipe sealant. I just use Teflon tape, which I've been using forever. So let me add some more coolant into the radiator. Till it reaches the bottom of the hole. Remember, on these old Mopars, if you fill that all the way up to the top, you have to have some kind of reservoir. So I've got another type of bottle I'm going to put in here, because this one, the little nipple, broke off the top, which is supposed to, if it gets that high, it dumps it to the ground. So this was my universal coolant recovery bottle. The bottom is hooked to this hose. So I'm going to open this up, see if any coolant comes out yet, but I can feel air pressure coming out. It's blowing air out, and it's bubbling in the radiator. So let's see if we see the water come out. Oh, there it is. There it is. All right, so now your air bubble, your air pocket is no longer at the top of the engine, because if you were to start this up with that much air in your air pocket, the coolant would never get to the top of your engine and it would overheat. So you saw how fast that came out of there. So now that I know that air pocket is gone and it's full all the way up to the top edge here, which is higher than the heads. Okay, so don't forget, bleed all the air out of your cooling system as you're filling it up. And now I'm going to top this off, and then make sure this is tight and not leaking. And then that's your cooling system. Oh, also, once you do start it back up, I've got that the heat control valve here, which is closed. So remember, after you start it up, you need to open up your heat valve to heat, and then now your heater core, if it didn't just fill up now, because it's a little bit higher than that, then it's going to fill your heater core up, and then you're going to be low again. So just make sure you have that open, everything's circulating, it warms up so that your thermostat opens up, and then let it run for a little while, and then keep topping that off, and you should be good. Got to say, you also need to check inside your car in case your heater core is leaking. Because on that car, I changed the AC evaporator core because it was leaking, and I put in a copper core. But never changed the heater core in that one. It was never leaking. It's still never leaking, or hasn't leaked yet. And this one's all original AC evaporator and heater core, because I've got quite a few of these boxes saved, so used ones, and haven't had to buy a new one yet besides that one there. Okay, so check for leaks when you first fire up, besides checking everything else for leaks: power steering, coolant, oil, and especially fuel. Okay, my transmission is full, my radiator is full. So went to go look at gear lube yesterday, and this overdrive training I have in here, the 833, you know, I've been told, even in the service manual, it says you can use ATF in the colder climates instead of the 85-90 gear lube. So it was cheaper just for me to buy some Dexmerk ATF. It took about 3 quarts. I had this fluid transfer pump. I guess they use it for moving oil, and you can also suck oil out of your dipstick. I just hooked this up to my battery, turned on the switch. This side went in to the gallon of ATF, and then this other end went into the side of the 833, and I just kept it on until it started pouring out into my drain pan, which was underneath the car. So now, time to put it back down. But I just wanted to let people know about this pump. I think it was less than $20. But I wanted to let people know that it's available at Menards. Here it is, Performax oil extractor pump. All right, so this is coming back down, getting closer to firing this guy up. So let's get on it. Took the alternator off because I had to get all my sensors installed. So this is your oil temperature sending unit, and your oil pressure sending unit used to go in there, used to stick out. Your 3-pin connector is your sending unit for the pressure. Remember, that one's the temperature. It has to go right into the side, because I was thinking of extending it out with some, you know, some 3/8 inch pipe thread spacers. But that has to be up there against the oil, so can't move that guy. And I need to extend that hole out. This is how it's pieced together, how it's gonna go in there. This piece here just is barely gonna sit up against here and sneak between the alternator and this piece right here, so it's gonna fit right through this hole. It's just that once I get this screwed in all the way, since this is just a 1-inch fitting, I'm afraid this part here, when I trial fitted it, it gets really close to this part here as I'm spinning it down to tighten it against that female to female. Or if I put all this, assemble all this first and screw it into there, I still need to be able to turn this, and this black plug assembly is real close to this. So I'll see once I tighten it down, tighten this male to male down. Because if I use, this is a 1 inch, this is a 1.5 inch. If I use this, then the sensor looks like it's too far out this way. So the 1 inch puts it right about here, but it's almost like I need another 1/4 inch. Like if they sold it as a 1 1/4 instead of a 1 inch. You know, I could always have this retapped, one of these 1.5s, just so I can cut it down. But let's see how this fits. Just have to be able to tighten this oil pressure sending unit. Here's the trial fit. It looks like it's gonna clear the belt pretty tight. I'm gonna try to get the alternator on there and see how this fits. So there's the sending unit down there. And it looks like it'll clear the belt. At least half an inch. And then the other sending unit is right there. So it looks like it's gonna work. So all 3 sending units are gonna be in there. Now with this is a 45-degree oil filter. I think this takes the 3/4 16 oil filter thread. But then this one here, this 45-degree oil filter adapter, this one uses a metric filter, the thread, and it also has a spare oil pressure fitting access hole right there. And here I put in a 90, and then I put in a light sensor. It's an oil pressure light sending unit, which is shorted to ground until pressure is on it. So if you lose oil pressure, your oil light will come on. But I just wanted to point that out. There's 2 different 45-degree angle oil filter adapters. There could be more than the 2 I'm talking about, but this one takes a metric oil filter thread, and the other one takes a standard oil filter thread. Just wanted to make you aware of that in case you have the wrong one. If you put the wrong filter on the wrong thread, it might physically screw in, but it'll be loose, or it can work its way loose and fall off, lose oil pressure, and cost you an engine. All right, that's the final assembly. Everything's tight, everything's Teflon taped. Let's get this alternator back on here. Ran into a problem. So as I'm tightening down the alternator, I thought I was all finished with this. But as I'm tightening down the bottom front bolt, I was just watching this gap here, and I thought, well, when nothing is touching, this should fit all the way up against the water pump housing, not have any wiggle room. So I realized this is hitting here on the oil pressure sending unit. So I'm gonna have to rethink this, because I could grind down some of the alternator here, but then if I'm out on the road and have to buy another alternator at AutoZone or O'Reilly's to get me out of a jam, they won't have anything ground down, and I might not have a file or a grinder with me to fix it on the road. So I'm gonna rethink this whole thing. Might take this sensor back off here, put it back on the front since it's smaller diameter, extend the little fitting coming out of the block so that it's closer to the edge over here, and I'm gonna have to stand this up so that now this sending unit can go up on top here, spaced out away from the head. So yeah, there's only one way to see if this stuff fits. It's a lot of trial and error. So I thought I was finished, but I don't want that. I can crank this alternator down without knowing that it was touching, and it might snap off that brass assembly I have screwed into the block, and then I'm in real trouble. So let's redo this again. Okay, here's the next configuration. This is a 1.5, then my T, then the oil pressure sending unit, the factory one for oil pressure. Remember, the temperature one is down there on the side. And then this is a 2.5 inch, 1/8 inch male to male. and then a female 1/8 inch coupler, and then the setting unit for the rally cluster. So I pieced this up earlier and it looks like it'll stand up pretty tall right here, but it should clear the alternator. All right, let's get this assembled and put the alternator back on. All right, this is the final setup here. This is this wire here is going to be shortened up, and it's going to go to my oil pressure sending unit for the rally cluster and cut off. Now I can turn this sensor in a little bit because it is really close to the belt. So I think I can turn it in another 1/8 of an inch. But those wires, I'm going to have to put a shield around it. And then also run these wires behind up where the 1/8 inch pipe comes up, and then just attach it from behind here. That way this part isn't flopping around and I can pin it back. But that is really close to the belt. But I'll just have to have it that way because there's no way of shortening this up and putting any more shorter spacers in there without changing my T or can't get any closer. So that 1.5 inch extension, the T, and then this. So the only other way would be like to put a different T in there that's shorter. But that's the only T I can find at Ace Hardware. I'll look around because I'd rather have this in another 1/2 inch if I can get the right kind of T. They do sell some T's where they're threaded on one end instead of having 3 females. So I'm gonna look into those, see what else we can do with this. But this is the final setup. I've got some connectors for the fans coming in on Wednesday from eBay. It's just I need the male end. Just bought the plastic by themselves because I have a lot of the female connectors already. So that's the final setup for those fittings. All right, updating my cooling fan problem or wiring. Okay, so these fans all come with this type of connector, okay? It's a male horizontal and vertical connector that looks like that. So on eBay, I had to buy the connectors which come bare like this. They're a matched set like that, male and female. But I only needed the 2 males, okay? Got them off of eBay. So these sockets are normal 30-40 relay sockets. So I have a bunch of these. I buy them 5 at a time. And then the fat wires here I pull out. Because remember, these fans, even though the wire in the fans might be skinny, you got to have enough wire to not get hot. Okay, so if you look at these relay sockets, this one's heavy duty, this one's heavy duty. You know, they might be a 14 gauge, maybe even a 12. It's sure not a 10. Okay, and then the control wires are skinny, like this black one and this white one. Those are the ones that actually trip the relay. So I pull out, let's say, the yellow and blue, and then I put them into these and lock them in. So that's what I plan on doing for those 2. They're going to be run 2 separate relays, and I'm going to show you the relays. I had to put these in the other car. These are 70 amp relays, all available on eBay. But the sockets, if you look at them, these are different from the 30-40s. See how big these males are here? They're extra wide, and then the contacts inside are even a lot heavier duty than the smaller ones that the 30-40 amp relays use. But had to get these on eBay. 2 sockets, and they don't come with the relays. So another vendor had the 70 amp relays. Make sure it says 70/80 on the relays, and you'll get the bigger ends on there for current load capacity. And then you have to have the bigger sockets. So that's what is going to be hooked up to. The relays are going to be hooked up to this thermostat control that goes against the fins on the inside. So the hot air is pushing through and then triggering this depending on where we have it set, because you can hear it clicking depending on your temperature going through the bulb. And that has its own fuse that's going to be coming right off the battery, a big 60 amp fuse on each side, just so that in case anything gets shorted, it kills the fuse and doesn't catch your battery wiring on fire. All right, so that's the update. 70/80 amp relays, and then buying the 30/40 amp sockets, relay sockets, using the ends to go in the male. Well, the females actually go in this part because the males are on the fan. And also, I have this left over from the air intake I bought for the CUDA. This extra piece was not needed because I just used it's a 3.5 inch tube. Bought the silicone coupler on eBay, and this I had left over. So I'm probably gonna cut this off and just run my K&N air cleaner straight down like I did with the other one, because there's no real area to build a box with all this stuff in the way. So it's just gonna have to sit there in the hot air. But at least I've got that going on. So one day, get to start this thing soon. Just stay tuned. I'm going to show how to wire your fans up. Since my radiator, aluminum radiator, came with its own fan shroud and 2, I think they're 12-inch fans on the front of it, or the rear of it, depending on how they're facing. I'm going to show how to wire them, and I already showed my thermostat. It's the fan controller I got off of eBay, and there's 3 contacts on here. This one's the common. I'm just using this cheap meter I had from Harbor Freight because my other good meter's up in the shop. So this is the ground. Remember, ground is going to be triggering the relays. I'm going to show you how to wire those up also. So this middle terminal comes on the low side. I don't know if you can see this here. For continuity, when the temperature goes low, this one is attached to that pin through the contacts, and this one is not connected. So this would say, I would say this would call this one normally closed. This is normally open. So once the temperature gets to wherever you set this, then this one goes active and it connects to this pin over here. This goes in front of the radiator with a zip tie, and I just put it underneath the upper hose because the water's flowing down from the thermostat housing and it comes in through the upper hose area and before it flows across. So I usually put this right in front of the radiator because the air is always being drawn in and it affects the temperature in that bulb, and the fluid or gas in the coils end up going to the switch, and it's just a piece of metal that expands and contracts with the pressure, just like a bimetal strip would with temperature. Okay, so here, my fans in the car came with a connector like this. but they don't give you the mating connectors. So these are the male pins of the spades. This is just a fan I picked up at a swap meet, but they all the fans all seem to have that same connector. So I've had these connectors I buy for the 30-40 amp relays. You can get them on eBay. Either just the sockets themselves or the relay socket combination. But I buy them 5 at a time on eBay. And I bought more this time because I was out just for the wiring that's in these sockets. So you can take, I usually have a little stiff Allen wrench. One of them's on a screwdriver head. And you reach in there and you can depress the lock and then the wire comes out, okay? So I pull the wires out, and I also want, just so I could use the 2 fat wires. These are the trigger wires, the 2 small ones. If you ever look at a relay diagram, I think it's, 85, 86 or something. This one's always 30, the supply, and I think this one's 85, this one's 86, but these two are out here, I can't remember the numbers, but the 2 small ones are always your trigger. So one's ground, one's 12, doesn't matter which way they are because it'll just close the coil to close the contacts. So I buy these sockets, I pull out the 2 heavy wires because there's also a red wire in there, which I don't really use because the wires on the fan are blue and black, okay? So then I go on eBay, and for $1.99, I was able to buy just these 2 connectors like this. They didn't come with wires. And if you look on eBay, you can find them for $1.99. It always says sale. So for some reason, I only found one for $1.99. The other one was $7.99. Okay, so you get the blank connector. I pull the 2 big wires I want. There's actually 3 big wires for the relay contacts. There's a yellow, a blue, and a red. Here are the reds. I didn't want to confuse the red with, you normally use red for hot, but the fan side has a blue and a black. And on my other fans, when I hook the fans up to a battery so that the air draws through the radiator, the blue was on top, and on this fan is backwards because I don't know, but you can move them. So I put the blue to match the blue on my fans in the car, in the radiator, on the radiator. And then the yellow is just going to be the ground, okay? So that's how I get my wires and the connectors for the cooling fans, okay? So let's get rid of that. Now that we have this is your hot and this is your ground. And what we're going to do, the way we wire this, let's see if you can see this. Okay, let's sit here. We'll draw this out. Here is your temperature control with the little probe, which is going to go on the radiator. And then here's the dial, and here's the common. Here is your normally closed at low temperature, normally open at high temperature. See if I can zoom this. Okay, you guys can see that, or just watch it on a bigger screen. So since we're negative triggering the relay, if you compare the 30-40 amp relays, these are what a lot of cars use. Okay, That's just a normal standard 30, 40 amp relay. But the 70s, it's marked 60, 70, 80 amp relay if you look at them on eBay. Look at the size of these connectors, okay, compared to a standard automotive relay. So fans draw a lot of current, and I wanted bigger contacts, so I went with these relays in my other Hemi swap car, just because I know these will handle more current, and there are probably some bigger contacts on the relay side. Okay, so to get these, had to go on eBay, buy the two sockets separately. I think they were $8 a piece, maybe $7 a piece. Had to get the two sockets separately, and had to get the two relays separately. So two separate eBay orders, but I always get everything from US suppliers, so I don't have to wait for anything to come from China or anything. So just look, I think they came from California or New Jersey. Either way, it took a couple days, 2 or 3 days, and I got them in the mail. Okay, so these are the relays I use. They come with, you know, your big 3 heavy wires, and then your 2 smaller trigger wires. And the way you can move these, like I moved the other ones, like with this one, I took out the middle white wire. I take a small Allen wrench, because all you're doing is releasing that lock, just like the other pins that I showed on the wiring harness. See that little, that's the lock holding it into the socket, okay? So I usually take a small Allen wrench, because it's stiff, heavy duty. Let me see if I have that out here, and I don't, but grab that. Same way I take these out. You just take a small Allen wrench or something good, heavy, something that won't bend, like a paper clip will not do it. Just push against the lock, and if you push that at the right spot, it pulls out. And then sometimes you have to take let's say a razor knife or something, and you might have to bend that back up a little bit, as long as you didn't break it off, just so you can click that back into your socket to reuse it. So the lock always goes on the part with the little raised hole, and if you bend that up enough, it just takes a little bit, then it'll lock it in there, okay? So I do the same thing with the big heavy wire that I'm not going to use. It's a normally closed contact on the relay, which is usually the middle one here. So I'm just using your trigger wires, and I'm using a hot wire and supply wire. Okay, so the way this is hooked up, this temperature control, you've got your ground. It's going to be a ground switched relay, okay? So to run this, let's say this is going to go to ground. It's your ground symbol. It's supposed to look more fatter on top, skinnier on bottom. And then this is not going to be used unless you want to turn something on when it's cool. And then you're going to use this trigger wire, the contact wire, when it gets to a certain temperature. This is the one that shows continuity to to this wire when you hit a certain temperature, okay? So then you're gonna be supplying, let's say the first fan. Here's your fan. One side is gonna be grounded. On my fans, it happens to be out of that connector. You've got your connector like this. One this way and one this way. This is my positive up here, and this is the negative. All right, so here's the other fan. Same thing, ground on the stand-up wire, and then here's your supply wire, which is going to be the top wire. In my case, it'll be the blue wire, because on the fans there's a blue and a black. So the blue wire is what you connect the positive for the fan to suck in towards the engine. Okay, so let's say here's your relay. You've got a terminal facing this way. You've got your two trigger wires, and then you've got your supply, your hot. Same with this other relay. Supply, hot. Okay, so this hot is going to go to, let's say, it's going to go to a 12-volt supply, but you're going to have, I use a big 60 amp fuse. And that's the symbol for the fuse, so 60 amp. And then that also goes to this one down here. There's a fuse, 12 volts. Okay, so this is a 60 amp fuse. Remember, this is your supply. These two connect. When these two get 12 volts in ground, it doesn't matter which one you use. These two will connect like a switch, okay? So you could supply this side and send this side to the fan. Or a lot of diagrams you see, you'll see this is the supply hooked to your battery, but it doesn't really matter. These don't matter which you hook them to, unless you put a diode in like I always do. Okay, so this is supplying that fan, this is supplying that fan. Now, you have to decide, oh, okay, so this trigger going to ground, when this reaches a certain temperature, which you're gonna set by turning this dial, this is going to go to the center of these two relays, okay? That way you have your ground. Once the thermostat turns on, you have your ground hitting the ground side of the relays. Now, you have to decide, because what I do on mine, I connect this over like this, okay? So mine are both connected like this. They're constantly getting battery power whenever the battery's hooked up. Even if the key is turned off in my car, if the engine is still hot and that radiator senses that this senses that the radiator is still past my dial setting, it turns my fans on, and as soon as it cools down enough, it shuts them off, depending on how hot I have this set or how cool, okay? So you have to decide, do you want to hook it up my way, where my fans can always come on if it reaches a certain temperature? Because the people sometimes say, hey, your car's running, and I'll say, no, the fans are coming on, but then they shut off, after a couple minutes. You can run it like this, so now you're getting supply to the other side of your relays, or you can run this to a switch 12 volts, which only comes on when you turn on your ignition key. That way your fans will never come on unless your key is on. But then your fans will shut off when you turn your key off. So you decide, this is optional, whether you're gonna run that to a switch 12 or you're gonna run it like I do, right to the hot. So this is an optional wire going straight to the battery through your fuse. Plus also, if you're gonna run this to a switch 12 volts, you need to put a little fuse in here too. That way, in case this wire shorts out, you don't smoke it all the way back to your ignition source, which is your key switch or your ignition switch or another relay somewhere. Always try to put fuses in your wires whenever you run stuff, just so that it's separate from the main stuff. Plus, you know, a wire can turn red hot with battery amperage going through it. It'll glow red like a toaster until it catches something else on fire, or burns up itself like a fusible link. Your fusible links should never be wrapped up because they have to let the smoke out when they get hot enough to blow. And Chrysler always said that too, never tape up your fusible links with your other wires. Okay, so that's it. These are the relays. They're always in this little encapsulated plastic box. Always mount them down. Never mount them like this in your car because they'll catch water. So if you mount them like this, you can buy these relay sockets. If you have two of them together, because I have two fans, they always click together. And then you buy the relays that have these little mount clips on top. That way you can screw them right to the firewall. And then that's your holder. You can mount them underneath the battery, in front by the grill, but they have to be mounted like this. But just remember, if they are mounted like this, you know, you can get water in the connections underneath because this isn't waterproof now. So it keeps the water from going in your relays this way, but you can still get moisture on your contacts where the relays plug in. So put it somewhere. You can put it underneath the battery or something under the battery tray on the front just to hide them. Because I have some for my headlights too, just so that all the current isn't going through the headlight switch. I've got relays to run the power window motors, and I use relays everywhere. There's some in the trunk, some to pop the trunk, to pop the door latches, because the door locks, because my alarm system locks and unlocks the doors when I lock and unlock the remote with the remote. So relays are your friend. They just transfer the current away from the little switches, because your switches are now just triggering your small wires, okay? So this is the wiring. You can find wiring on how to set this stuff up everywhere. So this is how I'm wiring it up. I'm gonna put all this together, extend the wires with heat shrink and solder where I need them to terminate or reach. And I'm gonna get all this hooked up. This is in my CUDA. This is hidden just right up in the front between the battery corner and the apron, and that front radiator support is just kind of hidden in there. But it doesn't have the knob, and I just have the little potentiometer top sticking out where I can turn it and click it, because I don't really go by the numbers on this. I just go by when it clicks on and goes off. If the fan's coming on too much, I just turn it down a little bit, or turn it up a little bit so it doesn't turn on so often, or if you need it to cool off more, you can turn it down more. Okay, so that's that. There's a lot of stuff in this video, just like my other sections I keep uploading. So I'm gonna try to send this one up. This will be the last one for part 8 or whatever, 8 or 9, whatever I'm on. So you can see where I'm up to, and just need to get all this wiring now. So now that I got everything from eBay, it's almost ready to throw in there. All right, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around and subscribing. Oh, and YouTube found a way. I was trying not to monetize my channel because I hate watching commercials, but as I'm going through my videos and watching them on YouTube, they found a way to add commercials in the middle of my videos and at the start of my videos. So YouTube's making money on my videos now, and I'm not. So I'm trying to monetize, and it said I didn't have enough viewing hours in the last 365 days. So if you guys want to help me out, if you've learned anything from me, whether it's the well videos, the fix-it videos, or everything else I've done, troubleshooting your Honda timing chain jumping teeth, stuff like that. If I've ever helped you, please just go on my channel, start a long video and let it run. I don't care if you're watching it. Just get me some hours, please. And thanks for subscribing. Don't have to watch my videos. Just start them, go to bed. I don't care. Just get me some hours and help me out. Thanks, guys.